Ken Wilber, what my experience of him, he's a Buddhist Christian scientist. And he weaves together Buddhism and Christianity with a scientific understanding of things. And so his interests happen to be like exactly in sync with mine. What he did in this book, Quantum Questions, he pulled together the personal writings of Heisenberg, Schrödinger, Einstein, de Broglie, Jans, Planck, Pauli, Eddington. Did you hear my little German get kicked in there? All of these really, really brilliant scientists, their personal writings, okay? Why are they their personal writings? Professionally, they can't speak to this stuff. It's not scientific. They want to talk about their philosophies and what they've learned from the hardcore deep science they got into. And so this is just a fascinating book, and for me in particular, because it pulls together science and spirituality. Now, Ken Wilber goes to great lengths to explain that the scientists themselves do not believe that science can ever be linked with spirituality. And that might make you think, well, then what I'm doing is hypocritical, right? But this is what they're actually saying. Science in itself is completely incapable of ever reaching that which spirituality is, which is, if you recall, chapter 20 in the book. It's our friend Kurt Gödel. What did Kurt Gödel do?
He basically proved in a theorem that you can't prove everything, essentially.
One of the authors in this says, here's the problem with science. The ego's the problem. We're the ego, at least in the flesh world, and it is part of the system. And you cannot figure, according to Gödel, you cannot figure everything else out when you're in the system. You need another gear. That other gear is spirituality. And again, one of these guys talked about how it's this very desire for scientists to come to know things that they don't know is the spiritual pursuit. It's the same thing. And so, but they use it flesh-oriented, whereas spirituality is using it to try to come to understand the divine. And it's Max Planck that says it's the same thing. So we're going to start with Schrödinger, because I'm going to use several different authors, some scientists over the next couple weeks, just to look at how some of these brilliant minds look at spirituality and philosophy. And we're going to start with Schrödinger. Now, Erwin Schrödinger was the gentleman who formulated the concept of Schrödinger's cat. Remember Schrödinger's cat? What is it? Schrödinger had figured out with his colleagues at the time the nature of the world, at least getting pretty close to it, and he used an example called Schrödinger's cat to try to explain the nature of reality as they were seeing it. And it was defined this way by Schrödinger, which he, by the way, used as an example of what he considered to be sort of absurd, that this is the way the world seems to be operating. You have a cat and it's in a box, and inside that box is some sort of toxin or a poison, like a cyanide tablet. And there's a 50% chance that that tablet is going to release its toxins. If it does, the cat dies. If it doesn't, the cat's alive. According to Schrödinger, the world operates this way. Prior to opening that box to check on the status of the cat is both alive and dead. It's called Schrödinger's cat because it's a crazy concept that he came up with. How can a cat be both alive and dead at the same time? Well, that's the nature of superposition in the world we're living in. It's probabilities and possibilities. It's fairly easy to explain when you think in terms of 10 minutes from now. 10 minutes from now, we could all be sitting in this room. But 10 minutes from now, we also might be running out of this building because, perhaps a fire starts raging in the woods back there. And so we have to leave the building. Both of those things are possible right now, although on a cold, snowy day, not the fire thing so likely. But surely there's possibilities of things happen. According to the physicists, both of them exist right now as potentials. It also works when you think in terms of video games. You're playing a video game like Pac-Man. Pac-Man can go to the left, he can go to the right. In the data of the video game, both going to the left and going to the right exist as potentials. But then you pick one of them. You either go to the left or the right. If you go to the left, does the right still exist? Yes, as a potential. And that's the way the world operates. We think of it as just this one thing, but it's actually this infinite series of potentials out there. And that's Schrödinger from Schrödinger's cat. Now, he, among many of other physicists, weren't satisfied with just the physical pursuit of things. He became a very spiritual person, at least very open to these types of philosophies. I'm going to read to you where he became, or where he came to in his mind towards the end of his life. Just a couple lines. This one's called, by Schrödinger, the oneness of mind. The oneness of mind. He says, there appears to be a great multitude of conscious egos. The world, however, is only one. This comes from the fashion in which the world concept produces itself. The several domains of private, it's in quotes, private consciousness partly overlaps. The region common to where they all overlap is the construct of the real world that is around us. See, consciousness, what he's surmising, is the same thing for all of us. It's the one thing. You could call it God or source, higher power, whatever. We all have a piece of it. That's what he's calling private consciousness. And the world that we're living in is our overlap of your experience of that private consciousness and my experience of that private consciousness. I have it drawn with a simple little drawing. We are these physical beings hovering around this one thing. You could call it God, Lord, higher power, the Tao, truth, so many different things you could call it. The feeling, when you do it the right way, is a certain kind of love. If you're connected to everything, it's a certain kind of love. Well, we are individual beings having an experience, a private consciousness experience around this one mind. He then says, the multiplicity of these egos is only apparent. In truth, there is this only this one mind. This is the doctrine of the Upanishads, which is the Hindu texts. He then quotes a Islamic Persian mystic, Aziz Nasafi, from one of his writings from the 1300s. On the death of any living creature, the spirit returns to the spiritual world, the body to the bodily world. In this, however, only the bodies are subject to change. The spiritual world is one single spirit who stands like unto a light behind the bodily world, and who, when any single creature comes into being, shines through it as through a window. According to the kind and size of the window, more or less light enters the world. The light itself, however, remains unchanged. So what we have is human beings with different size windows, right? Different shapes and sizes. And we all are connected to this great one mind, the consciousness, if you will. And our job is ultimately singular, to connect in such a way that the light shines through us. What's Jesus say? You are the light of the world, right? Now, look at this teeny little window. Can light shine through that? Yeah, look at this giant window. Can light shine through that? Can you necessarily tell just by meeting a person what kind of light they are? No, you can't tell, but you can feel it. If they do it the right way, you should be able to feel it. Well, we're all different size lights or size windows, and light comes through in accordance with the type of window that you are. That's what all of us are doing. You are the light of the world. Your job is to shine the light through your window. Jesus says, to those who much has been given, much is expected. Big bay windows shine more light. Those teeny little basement windows, perhaps not as much. Context matters. Relativity matters. People are born in different situations, and yet we're all connected to that same bright light. Now, I'm going to link Schrödinger to a Hindu concept of Siddhi, which is perfection. In Hinduism, there's many different degrees of working towards this perfection. And as I was understanding reading this text, it's similar to if a tree is an apple tree and it bears fruit. Does it think it's special? Does an apple tree think, look at that apple, I did that, right? Or is that what apple trees are designed to do? They're supposed to make the fruit, and they just do, naturally, as part of the growth process. That's us. Naturally a part of your growth process as a spiritual being, you're going to bear fruit. You brag about it, you just lost it, okay? You're not special. You were given a window. Shine the light through it. The fruit comes naturally as part of it, right? On the highest level of this process in the Hindu teaching of Siddhi is what's called Samasiddhi, which is perfection in sameness. It's the highest of all virtues. It's freedom from rebirth. Sameness, therefore, is the highest of all perfections. Sameness, well, it's the same principle of one mind. You share the same mind as me ultimately. The only reason we differ is because of life circumstances. Whether it's gender or age or orientation or political affiliation, all this stuff that happened to us, eras in which you live, thousands of years ago, the people that were living then had the same sort of experience going on. They had a light they were supposed to connect to, period. Well, here's the principle, again, the highest level of perfection in the Hindu philosophy is to see the sameness in everybody. Talk about principle of one mind. My job is not to look at you and judge you for skin color or for age or political affiliation or addiction issues or anything like that. Finances, go on with that stuff. My job is to see the sameness. Krishna says, all creatures are bewildered by delusion of apparent opposing dualities. It only looks like we're different. This is what Schrödinger was saying. He says, this is just an illusion. He refers to Maya as well, which is the Hindu concept of illusion. We seemingly are different creatures, but we're all the same in the fact that the light is shining through each one of us, and it's the same light. And then Krishna says, when you perceive unity in all creatures, you attain the infinite spirit. In order to let the light shine through you, you must perceive the sameness in everybody. Without fail. No judgment. You don't get to pick a certain group of people that you don't agree with and say, well, they're wrong and I'm right and they're different. No, the sameness in everybody. And it's pretty simple when you understand this. And I don't care the shape or the size. Whatever the issue is in the physical world doesn't matter. They are also connected to this light. It's the exact same light you're connected to. It's the Tao that runs through them just as it runs through you. It's the Holy Spirit that inspires them just as it inspires you. They might not be aware of it, but they're still connected to it. When you perceive it this way, you attain the infinite spirit. Now the light shines through you. That's how it works. Once I go, oh, you guys are my brother, right? We are brothers together, or sisters. Again, notice how that wouldn't matter to somebody who's being spiritual. There is no gender, and there's no race, and there's no religion in any of this. There's just the light. And your job is to connect to it and see that the other person is connecting to it and is already connected to it. In Siddhi, the concept is you have to reveal the spirit that's already inside of you. It's waiting to come out like a seed. The apple tree grows into an apple tree, can do nothing else. The seed of this light was placed inside of you. It is you. You were born with it. Your job is to peel back all the isms and all the layers and all the negative self-talk and all the issues that you've ever had and help others do it along the way. That's your job. That's how the light gets revealed inside of you. You help your neighbor do it just as you're doing it. See, now we're a team. This is what the world can be working on collectively. We're actually all doing it whether we know it or not. Once the apple tree bears the fruit, it doesn't brag. It probably has a quality of, I did what I needed to do though, right? It bore the fruit. That's appreciation. A spiritual being can bear that same sort of fruit on a spiritual level, and it feels good, but you don't take credit for it. You did the one thing you were supposed to do. As Jesus says, if your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light. Single eye is I see you all as the same as me, not different. That's the process. It's what Schrödinger talks about. Brilliant quantum physicists saw it that way. The science oriented him into that direction. Connects them to the concept of Siddhi in Hinduism, which also taught that for thousands of years. It's the same thing for all of us. Sameness is the answer.